welcome back. It's a world without malaria. My name's Chris, and I'm your host. In this third chapter of the series, we're going to investigate the 5 types of malarial parasites that infect humans. We'll look at some of the differences in these infection types, and you'll also see why the different species of malaria parasite can have a different effect on humans. As you progress through the whole series, your knowledge will build. It's amazing how we're made by God to learn and take information in, but don't worry if you find it hard to remember all the details in this video. We'll revisit key themes as we progress through the course. By the end, I'm sure you'll know the things that are important to you and your community. But if you are enjoying the series so far, go ahead and encourage others to join you in the study. As we progress, there are more and more practical steps that you can take to reduce the impact of malaria, and having friends to work with, well, that's just fantastic. Enjoy this video.
Hi, my name is Estuardo. It is good to be with you today. Let's talk about malaria. All malaria parasites have the family name Plasmodium, followed by a word that tells us the kind of Plasmodium parasite they are. For example, the parasite that causes vivax malaria is called Plasmodium vivax. There are nearly 200 parasitic Plasmodium species that infect birds, reptiles, and other mammals, and about 30 species that naturally infect non-human primates like monkeys and apes. However, there are 5 main types of malaria parasites that affect humans. They are Plasmodium falciparum, which is also called PF malaria, Plasmodium knowlesi, which we can call PK malaria, Plasmodium malariae, or PM malaria, Plasmodium ovale, which is PO malaria, and lastly, Plasmodium vivax, which is also known as PV malaria. The most deadly types of malaria are Plasmodium falciparum and Plasmodium knowlesi, PF and PK. The other types of malaria infections can still kill you, but the biggest killer is PF malaria, which causes 90% of malarial deaths. Let's spend a little bit of time looking at each of these 5 types of malaria and talk about some of their similarities and differences. The first one we will focus on is Plasmodium falciparum, or as I just explained, it is also called PF malaria. It is the killer malaria and found in tropical and subtropical areas of Central and South America. It is also found in Africa and Southeast Asia. PF malaria results in the most severe infections, and although only 60% of malaria infections are from PF malaria, it is responsible for 90% of malaria-related deaths worldwide. Next is Plasmodium knowlesi, abbreviated to PK. It is sometimes called monkey malaria. PK malaria often occurs in combination with PF malaria in what is called a mixed infection. A mixed infection is when a person is infected with 2 or more types of malaria at the same time. PK malaria was originally found in Southeast Asia, but only in monkeys. In 1971, the first case of PK malaria was identified after crossing from monkeys to humans, and it is now a common cause of malaria in humans throughout Borneo and Malaysia, and it is sometimes found in Myanmar. PK malaria parasites breed very quickly in the human body, which means the vast number of parasites overwhelm the body and can kill the patient. Okay, now Plasmodium malariae. It is abbreviated as PM. It has restricted distribution and is said to be responsible for less than 1% of infections in India. It is also found in tropical and subtropical areas of Central and South America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. PM malaria is also known to cause malaria in dogs. The next one is Plasmodium ovale, and it is abbreviated as PO malaria. And it is the rarest of the 5 Plasmodium species that infect humans. It is mostly confined to tropical West Africa, including countries such as Ghana, Liberia, and Nigeria. The final parasite we will look at is called Plasmodium vivax, and is known as PV malaria, or often just called vivax. It is found in Southeast Asia. People rarely die from PV malaria, but they do get very sick. Vivax malaria is one of the 2 types of malaria that can recur more than once from a single infection, the other being PO. Although PV malaria is seldom fatal, it is very debilitating and causes severe tiredness and disability, which of course leads to loss of productivity, income, and education. It is important to remember that in many areas, the patient may become infected with multiple species of the malarial parasite. For example, in India, 4 to 8% of malaria cases are mixed infection. A mixed infection will affect treatment and symptom management. Malaria is an extremely significant tropical disease with an average of 250 million cases each year, causing up to over 600,000 deaths globally. However, it is likely that these figures are in reality much higher, as not all villages report to clinics and not all clinics report their figures to the World Health Organization, who in turn provides us with these numbers. Okay, so we know that malaria is caused by microscopic parasites, Plasmodium, being injected in our bodies by the bite of a female Anopheles mosquito. But did you know that after multiplication in our liver, the tiny parasites invade and feed on our red blood cells? These parasites multiply to fill each infected cell with 8 to 36 more parasites. Eventually, the red blood cells burst and the new parasites are released into the bloodstream, where they go on to invade other red blood cells and continue the cycle. At the time the red blood cell bursts, toxins are released in the body, and these toxins are what causes the chills and fevers a malaria patient suffers. The time between the invasion of a red cell and when it bursts is between 24 and 72 hours, depending on the type of malaria. PF malaria takes about 48 hours. PK malaria is the fastest and takes only 24 hours. PM malaria is longer and takes about 72 hours from infection to bursting. PO malaria takes 50 hours, and finally, PV malaria is similar to PF and PO and takes 48 hours. The signs of malaria infection or attacks, such as chills and fever, recur related to these outbreaks because these attacks occur every few days. We can see that having a normal body temperature at a given time does not rule out malaria. It is important to ask patients or parents whether there has been any fever during the past 4 days. Another way the body is affected by malaria happens in the spleen. The spleen is a filter for the blood, and because so many red blood cells have been destroyed, the spleen becomes enlarged soon after the first malaria attack, and greatly enlarged after repeated attacks. Anemia, which we cover in detail in chapter 5, can be present because of all types of malaria and is often severe in PF and PK because of the large number of damaged red blood cells. To understand the damage that malaria can do, we have to understand how blood works. When we breathe, oxygen comes in through our lungs and enters into the bloodstream. Red blood cells take this oxygen all over the body. The oxygen in the blood keeps the cells in our body alive. If the blood vessels are blocked, oxygen cannot get to some of the cells of the body, and those parts start to die. When a PF malaria parasite enters a red blood cell, it makes two changes to the blood cells as it begins to multiply. Firstly, it makes the cells sticky on the outside. And secondly, it slightly changes the shape of the cell. In the picture you can see on the left side a healthy red blood cell. On the right side, you can see two red blood cells that are deformed by PF malaria. These two changes mean that normal red blood cells have difficulty passing through the very fine blood vessels in the body's major organs such as the brain, the kidneys, and the liver. With the blood vessels blocked by these sticky cells, other cells can't get oxygen and begin to die, and so the person gets even sicker. When circulation in the brain is blocked, it is called cerebral malaria. And it is very serious. It causes significant brain damage and often death. In pregnant women, PF malaria has an extreme impact and can easily cause a miscarriage. Death of the newborn baby and mother is also a great fear. When the blood vessels in the liver are blocked, it is called malarial hepatitis. All of these diseases are potentially fatal and must be diagnosed quickly and treated appropriately. As I mentioned earlier, PF is responsible for most malaria-related deaths. PV and PO malaria can reoccur months or several years after initial infection due to sleeping parasites in the liver. This can be prevented by giving the correct medication after recovery. We will discuss medications in more detail in chapter 13, but for now, it is important to know that in many places, malaria parasites have become resistant to previously effective antimalarial medicines and require specially designed combined medications. In some cases, if a person has repeated exposure to malaria, they can develop a degree of immunity to the disease. However, the immunity will only be to the species of parasite they were infected with, and restricted to their geographical area. This immunity may only also last for a few months. For now, I think this is enough to think about as we have covered quite a lot. More detail will be given as we progress through the series. Be sure to keep referring to the BuzzOff manual as it contains some details not mentioned here. Until next time, nos vemos.